exposure to the process. And then y'all know Denise, of course. We are a small agency. We've got about 5 employees. That's all that we have in our staff. We are a special funds agency. We have about 4,000 individual licensees that we have, and then about close to 1,000 firm permits that are issued by us. So we're the regulatory board and licensing board for CPAs and CPA firms in the state. We also take care of administering the CPA candidates for them to be able to sit for the CPA exam. We run that through our office as well. Occasionally, we have to handle disciplinary matters if we have a CPA who has, we've determined through an investigation, has violated state statutes or board rules. So that's going to be the kind of work that we do there. Did y'all have any specific questions for me for our agency? Okay. Okay.
Would you say again?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You,
Talk about the budget now? Okay. We had made a request on our budget. We didn't have any changes over last year that we were going to request from you, other than funding for a 3% raise for the management staff, which is myself and the associate director, and a 4% raise for the 3 remaining staff members who are not at a managerial level, and of course have a lower salary than the management people do. So we wanted to ask for a little bit more money for them. So we're asking for a 4% for the staff at the office. We had included in the original submission of a budget, we were looking at increasing the per diem for at $40 a day for another 10 days. We had a couple of board members who were doing some work and representing our board to NASBA, and they're no longer in those positions to be doing that. So, and it really had not turned out to be necessary. So we were asking for the removal of that $400 as part of what could cover the personal services request to increase. But we didn't have any other increases that we were looking for in the budget. Our fees have been examined a couple of times this past year, trying to make sure that they're in line with regional, what we have in other states. They were looked at once for by the Attorney General's office, had an internship that they did examination of it. And then we had looked at it again for the part of the initiative, the Tackle the Tape initiative that the Secretary of State has for the 29 by 29 partners. And we are well within what the range is that we have in our Southeast region that other boards are charging their licensees and firms to be licensed every year. So we were not in any kind of a position where we were looking to raise fees on any of our people. And we have been charging $110 for a license or a permit. That's been in place since 2014. So it's been in place for 10 years and has not been raised, and we're not looking to raise it. And the firm permit is actually not charged to any of our in-state firms. They're only charged to our out-of-state firms, because not all CPAs work for CPA firms. And so if we charge to in-state firms, you're going to end up missing some people. So they're charged to the individual licensees because they'll work for a state auditor's office or a bank or something, so that, that we're not permitting. And so the in-state firms do not pay a licensing fee. It is only charged to out-of-state firms.
Any questions? Okay. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. You can begin.
Thank you, Senator Norwood. My name is Yvonne Laird, and I'm the Executive Director of the Mississippi State Board of Massage Therapy. I've served in that position for about 17 years. The Massage Therapy Board manages through a contract, a personal service contract, rather than having a state employee or state employees. We contract on a year-to-year basis. And we provide all services, including all personnel that it takes to do the job, plus rent, utilities, any general supplies. The board is only charged with things that are unique to the board. Our board's primary concerns are continued to be sex trafficking, prostitution, things of that nature. Back about 4 years ago, you gave us the authority to register massage establishments. And in doing so, we were able to track back the owners of these illicit businesses rather than just the licensees. We have 2 individuals that are currently in prison. And we know for a fact that they were simply the mama signs. They were not the owners, but they were the ones that were prosecuted. And those were prosecuted by the FBI. We've also found that in most instances, massage businesses, especially the larger ones, are not owned by Mississippi residents. Some of the large corporations that are, they're anywhere from California to New York City to a small town in Georgia called Duluth, Georgia. So during the implementation of the Occupational Licensing Review Act, it kind of opened up the state for a different method of entry into licensing. We have found that in some instances, we've had quite a few individuals who come in through that act. They get a massage business license, then they hire one individual who leaves the state, and then they channel unlicensed individuals through their facilities. So what has happened is this has resulted in more show cause hearings. In many instances, we have to have interpreters. In fact, we had an interpreter at our board meeting in December. It cost the board about $1,200 for 2 hours of service because the individual spoke no English and only spoke Cantonese. And so the board is having to assume the responsibility of those interpreters in order to give them, their opportunity to be heard. So we did have we requested $199,100. There was a reduction recommended by the LBO to $195,236. We're asking for your consideration to put that back in our appropriations to cover those additional costs through because of the increased cost in the hearings.
I have one more comment too, if on the budget. One of the things that was presented in the budget request was a reduction in the equipment. They wanted that to be reduced out of the budget so that they could add some more into the contractual. The legislative budget recommendation agreed with the reduction, but did not agree with the increase. And so the budget now looks even leaner than it has always been. And one of the things that they wanted to do in that reduction and increase in the contractual was, as Yvonne said, because of these extra costs for show cause hearings, but it was also because, as she has mentioned, she handles everything as a contractor for the board, all operating expenses and everything. She has served in this role at the same price since 2021. And so one of the things that they wanted to do was to increase the fee paid to her by $6,000 this next year, which is only $500 a month, which is one of the reasons that increase was requested. And I think this is the first time in maybe 4 years that it hasn't been a requested level funding.
Let's see more.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The two cases that were prosecuted by the FBI, was it in line with human trafficking?
Yes, sir.
Do you see of anything that we could do statutorily to help you or help the industry from?
The line that we walk is we can only deal with the licensees. So that's why we work jointly with the FBI, local law enforcement, and the Attorney General's office for prosecution of those illicit practices. So all we can do is just come in and revoke their license and tell them, they don't have a license. The issue that we face through our legislation, though, is the fact that illicit practice doesn't fall under our jurisdiction. It only falls under the jurisdiction of local law enforcement or the Federal Bureau of Investigations. So, there may be, as what we call parlors, and there's a grave difference between a registered massage business and a parlor. To us, a parlor signifies often illicit practice. And so, we have quite a few of those that are operating, and we do basically a cease and desist letter that says you need to stop doing this. You're not licensed in the state. However, if law enforcement doesn't pick it up and do the investigation, our board has no jurisdiction up to stop them.
Thank you.
I guess we have some further conversation here, and we'll get back if you have anything you want to add, just feel free to let us know.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. wonder about it. So, as far as quality, oh, but- oh, but- All right, thank you for coming now.
Absolutely.
Okay. you can begin.
Ready to go. All right. I'm Leanne Mordecai, and I'm the Executive Director for the Mississippi Board of Examiners for Licensed Professional Counselors. And in the handout, I provided you a little background about the agency. They are charged with regulating licensure for the state of Mississippi. Anybody who calls himself a licensed professional counselor or practices psychotherapy. So they're covered anyone who does those services for a fee, anyone who uses that name as a title. It's a 5-member board, and I've listed some information about how often they meet and what all their charges are as far as promulgating rules and regulations and so forth. But there are 2 staff members. I'm the executive director, and I have been for 12 years now. Seems like a long time. And for most of that time, I was the only employee. And about 2 years ago, you all provided another PIN for the board. So we have a customer service representative, someone who can provide support to me and the agency. And in preparing the FY26 budget, the board requested an increase for salary for both positions, which would also include the fringe benefits. And it was only for a total of $10,000 increase in their budgets. So they asked for exactly what they asked for last year. And Elbow came back with the exact amount minus that salary increase. So I'm here on behalf of the board just to ask that you would reinstate that amount to give entire level funding across all categories. And if you'll see on the back, there is a chart of revenue and cash. And over the past 5 years, the board has collected almost 104,000 more than it is expended each year. So they do have the money.
Since you have, looking at your, revenue that you collected,
Mhm.
how much are your fees?
Licensure fees are $220 every 2 years.
You thought about cutting the fees?
The board has not. As a matter of fact, it's actually on the low end compared to other licensing boards across the state. And last year, compact was put into place, and it's in the process of coming. So we have actually seen all the other 34 states that are in that compact, and we are kind of on the bottom end of that schedule, that fee schedule.
No need to raise, no need to raise them, no need to raise the fees, no need to raise the fees.
Absolutely
And,
not. I think a lot of that, why Vaughn was talking about the advent of the universal licensure where people have been able to come in and move from or move in from other states, that has actually increased some of our numbers. And I think that's why our licensing fees are even higher.
So how many members do you have?
We have about 2,500 licensees.
And you said many of them have come from other states?
There have been a number, I don't have that on hand. I wish I had pulled those numbers for you, but we have had a number of people coming in and people are preparing for the compact to go in place. So they're going ahead and getting licensed because it will be a while before the compact is in place because they have to do website development and software development. And they've just now gotten the actual board for the compact and executive director for the compact. So it will be a while, but everybody's already anticipating it. And advent of telehealth, people are practicing telehealth across state lines. And the only way to do that is to hold a license in the state where they're providing services from and where the client is receiving services.
Okay. All right. Thank
right.
you.
Thank you.
We'll be in touch.
Yeah.
Okay. And I do. They match the PowerPoint too, so. I counted that right. If you need any additional. Hold on. Thank you. Ready? Okay, thank you. I'm Stephanie Lee. I'm the Executive Director with the Mississippi State Board of Contractors. Thank you for giving us a few moments of your time today to review our requests. I do have a PowerPoint, but the PowerPoint and your handouts follow each other. They mimic each other. So I didn't know if you preferred the handout or to follow along on the PowerPoint. So I will be respectful of your time and try to be as brief as possible. So if you see on the first slide that we have up there, it's kind of hard to see on the screen and maybe hard to see on your handout. But right above the B on that slide is a little black dot. That represents our budget requests compared to the overall state budget. So as you can see in the grand scheme of things, it's a small request, but it's important to us and it's important to the state of Mississippi. Our agency is responsible for licensing construction contractors in Mississippi. So just like realtors or accountants have to have an occupational license, so do construction contractors if they're performing work over the stated statutory limits. We license all types of construction contractors, from commercial contractors, residential, electricians, plumbers, road builders, water sewer contractors, and everything in between. And licensure is essential for helping ensure that those contractors meet regulatory requirements and industry best practices, because it's important that the buildings that we work in and the homes that we live in, as well as the roads that we drive on, are constructed in a safe manner. So you see on this slide, Mississippi has one single point of contact for contractors. Compared to sister states that have multiple licensing boards, some of those as many as 5. I like to brag on Mississippi and say we've gotten it right from the beginning, because we've been in existence since 1952. So for 73 years, we've been that single point of contact. And so it's a much more efficient process for contractors to get licensed compared to some of our sister states, like I said, that have multiple boards that they have to go through to get the proper licensing. We were established in 1952, originally regulated just commercial contractors. In 1993, this body gave us jurisdiction over residential residential contractors as well. One of the things that I am very proud of is that in 1998, the Construction Education Fund was established. So a portion of all licensure fees that are collected by our agency are collected and then redistributed back to high schools, universities, and community colleges that have construction education and craft training programs. So while a lot of other legislative bodies are now grappling with how to address skilled workforce shortage, Mississippi gets to serve as an example. So we've been doing that, excuse me, like I said, since 1998. That was done at the request of construction industry leaders who petitioned this body to add an additional fee onto the licensure fee, like I said, that's collected and then redistributed back out to those institutions. That's the only 2 times in the 73-year history of the board that the fee's ever been raised. When that fund was established, and then about 25 years later, when the construction industry leaders petitioned to have that cost increase just to keep up with the rising cost of education. This next page is just some highlights from our agency. In 24, we expanded our outreach efforts, conducting 18 community engagements across the state. Conducted numerous workshops on licensure, how to obtain a license, as well as scam stoppers to help consumers be protected from unscrupulous contractors. Our compliance team conducted over 5,300 compliance checks. We resolved nearly 400 complaints, processed 13,000 applications. One statistic, I don't think it's noted on here, but 77% of new applications that we receive at our agency are issued a license. You see there in the middle of that page, the significant amount of traffic that we have on our website, as well as the significant number of phone calls that are processed by our customer service agents. We recently streamlined our classification licensure By combining 11 different classifications, we eliminated 3 and also eliminated the exams that are normally required for some of those classifications. We negotiated 3 new reciprocity agreements, which increases the opportunity for Mississippi contractors to be able to work in other states. And in addition to that, we also played a crucial role in helping some Mississippi contractors obtain licensing in other states, particularly North Carolina and Tennessee, that were impacted by Hurricane Helene and Hurricane Milton. So we're constantly striving to improve our internal processes to be able to serve the public and ensuring that there's a fair and efficient licensure process throughout. Are there any questions about the licensure? Real quick, I skipped over it, but who's required to have a license is typically always asked, and so I just want to make sure that we're clear on that. Commercial projects, the statutory limit's 50,000 and above, and then on residential projects, new construction, 50,000 and over, or improvements to an existing home over 10. That sometimes there's confusion about that. If it's less than that amount, state license isn't required. They may have certain requirements that they have to meet on the local level. I know the last couple of years, there's been some bills introduced regarding that. Sometimes licensure, permitting, and inspections are often used interchangeably, but they're very distinct things and very different. Our agency does the occupational licensure, not permitting, not inspections. Any questions about that?
Seymour.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With your licensors, did y'all go back and inspect the bridge collapse in Simpson County? Were they licensed contractors doing that work?
No, sir. We do the licensing, and then the inspections are often done on the local level if inspections are required at the local level. So cities and counties do the permitting, which is permission to work in that city, and then those requirements to obtain that permit is established through their alderman, their city council, or the county supervisors if it's out in the county as to what's required, and that varies across the state. The licensing process is consistent statewide. So they come to our agency to obtain a license, then they go through the city or county to pull a permit, and those cities and counties, the local jurisdictions, do the inspections to ensure that they're constructed within the code that has been adopted on the local level.
My question is, were they licensed contractors, not about the permitting and all?
I'm sorry, I misunderstood your question. Yes, TL Wallace was licensed contractor.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. Residential improvement projects over 10,000. So that's improvement to an existing residential structure over 10. New construction over 50. I mean, I don't really know how you can build a house these days for less than 50, but but improvements to an existing residence. And then in 22, the life safety trades were required to be licensed. That's electricians, plumbers, and HVAC technicians. If they're a subcontractor on a residential improvement project or residential building project. So if it's a handyman, like changing out a light fixture, a plumber, changing out a toilet, that's below that threshold. They're not required to have a state license. There was a lot of confusion when that bill was passed, and a lot of people thought that they were required and they weren't. So we've done a lot of educational seminars to try to help get everybody up to par on exactly the way that statute was worded and what it meant. So the way the statute's worded is the cost of the improvement. So we would look at the cost, the total cost. So even if you bought it and then they did it, we would have to look at the total amount of it. And there are some AG opinions on that about not being able to kind of split it up to try to circumvent the licensing requirements that's established by this body. You're welcome. If there's not any other questions about the licensure, I'll just jump into our budget real quick. As you see on slide 6, Our FY '25 appropriation was just over 4.3 million. LBO's recommendation for '26 is about 8,700 more than our FY '25 appropriation. Our request is 4.4 million. And let me jump into those. As you see also on that slide, our workload has increased 32% over the last 5 years. The number of licensees has gone up, in addition to the workload that we process at the agency. This current administration and legislative body has invested millions in site development to attract capital investment, jobs, and project-ready sites. So this economic development has had a direct impact on our workload at the agency. Excuse me. We're proud to be part of that progress and helping ensure that these developments are done compliant and for safety for those who benefit from those investments. But it has resulted in an increase in our workload. So we're requesting an increase in our budget in 2 main areas. The first one is salaries. In regard to salaries, last session, you granted our request to add an additional PIN to our agency to help with the increased workload that we've experienced. So all of our PINs are currently filled. We're fully staffed. We have no vacant PINs. We would like to be able to award staff below the executive director with salary progressions plus fringe. That comes to an amount of $80,474. That would be spread out among 17 employees. This would help in aiding to retain tenured employees that have already received training, certifications, and done successful performance-based rating criteria that's already in place at the agency. The second part of the salary request, the executive director's salary is established by the State Personnel Board. It has not changed in a number of years. We have made a request to SPB to increase that to make it equivalent or similar to our surrounding states. In anticipation of that being granted, we've just asked that those funds be added to our FY '26 budget. The second category is in contractual. So as you know, cost of everything has increased, from mileage to postage, process servers, court reporters, everything. So to offset those expenses, we have requested an additional $79,228 increase from our FY '25 budget appropriation. As you know, during the last couple of years, we've had significant severe weather events. We do publications, we do advertising after those events to help ensure that the public is not taken advantage of by unscrupulous contractors. Those expenses have increased, as well as our building lease agreement just went up. That's the first increase that we've had in the last 10 years. And then finally, we have worked for a number of years, contracted with an IT vendor to customize our licensure database. That's been the most cost effective for us, but there are some additional servers, server space, and some additional improvements that we need to make to help with the increased workload that we've experienced lately with our IT vendor. So that's the gist of the 2 categories where we're seeking a request of an increase. We do have sufficient funds. All of our revenue is derived strictly from fees associated with licensure. We've received no general fund appropriations, and we do have funds available to support both of our requests. If there's any particular questions about that, I'll try to answer those. Because the rest of the slides, the rest of the things in your packet are just some general information for your, sometimes these questions get brought up. So I was trying to be prepared for anything that might come up. And I can refer to those slides or run through them if you need me to, but I think they're pretty self-explanatory.
Now your fees, the fees for the contractors, they vary based on the area.
Yes, sir. If you will look on page 9, you'll see that licensing fee comparison. Um, you'll see how we stack up against those. The chart at the top really shows you a good comparison of what our fee is compared to the other states' fees. Some other states, are higher than ours, some are lower than ours, but we're consistent with the surrounding states. I mentioned earlier that commercial licensing fee has not changed except for the 2 times, and both of those related to the Construction Education Fund. Residential's been in place since it was established in 1993. It's a $50 application fee. That's never changed. It's still $50. So it's very, very, low threshold. If you're building a home, $50 shouldn't be what's keeping you from being able to get a license. Okay.
Anything you want to add?
I just appreciate y'all giving me time today to run through those requests. And if you have anything in those packets, I did include my card. It has my cell phone number on there. Please feel free to reach out to me on that anytime if I can help.
Well, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
We're not very interesting, are we? Y'all need me? Gonna stay? Oh. Yeah, sure, there you go. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, good. Okay, good, okay. Maybe. Ready? Good afternoon. I'm John Cawthorn. I'm the Executive Director of the State Board of Architecture, and joining me today is Mr. Larry Bishop. He's the President of the Board of Architecture. Also, we have Richard McNeil, who's one of the architect members, and Andrew Kilpatrick, who is the board's private legal counsel. So appreciate the time that you've given to us today. You do have a list of all of our committee and board members on page 2 of the budget handout that you've been provided. And the top of page 3 is a summary of our agency. The Board of Architecture was established in 1928 in order to safeguard the life, health, and property of the public. We are a consolidation of 3 regulatory bodies: the Board of Architecture, the Landscape Architecture Advisory Committee, and the Interior Design Advisory Committee, which each have 5 members appointed by the governor for a total of 15 members. And this structure, having 3 professions regulated by 1 agency, allows us to operate at optimal efficiency versus having 3 separate agencies for each profession. The board does employ 2 full-time employees assisted by contracted attorneys and a contracted private investigator. The Board of Architecture meets at least quarterly, while the advisory committees meet 2 to 4 times per year. The mission of the board is to serve the state of Mississippi by protecting and preserving the life, health, and property of the Mississippians and others who live, work, and play in the built environment. Through the regulation of the professions of architecture and landscape architecture, we also regulate use of the title Certified Interior Design in the state. The top of page 4, you'll see a summary of the board's guiding purpose, which is protection of the life, health, and property of the public, ensuring that buildings and outdoor spaces are designed and constructed with safety in mind by qualified design professionals, which is critically important as great harm could come to the public as a result of poor or negligent practice. The board has focused on efficiency. Over 95% of our licensure services are submitted online, and applications are processed within 3 weeks, actually much sooner than that. Our average in fiscal year 24 was 7 business days for processing applications. So we're doing better than our metrics. Additionally, our licensing system is paperless. So we're basically a paperless office. The bottom of page 4 is a summary of our fiscal year 26 budget request. And the top of page 5 are the budget considerations. The board has requested an appropriation of $362,783 for fiscal year 26, which is the same amount that was appropriated for the current fiscal year. So we're not requesting any increases. The Joint Legislative Budget Committee has recommended an appropriation of $363,967 for fiscal year 26, which takes into account increases in fringe benefits, PERS, contributions, et cetera. Changes from fiscal year 25 are very minimal. The contractual expenses category was decreased slightly in order to increase the capital outlay category to reflect the the rising cost of computer equipment. And this request will allow the continuation of the current slate of services. You'll notice on page 5, particularly the chart at the bottom of page 5, that we do operate on a 2-year income cycle. And over this 2-year cycle, over 80% of our revenue is received during renewal years, which takes place every 2 years, corresponds to even numbered fiscal years. That's when you see most of our revenue come in. And then there's a planned deficit during the odd numbered fiscal years. But our goal is over this 2-year period to essentially break even. Of course, we are a special fund agency, so there's no general fund revenue included in our budget. And the top of page 6, you'll notice the source of our revenue, which is mainly derived from renewals. Also, the license statistics are included on that page. 77% of our registrants are from out of state, 23% reside in Mississippi, and we average around 2,000 licensees at any given time. It fluctuates a little bit from year to year, but we've stayed pretty consistent at 2,000. Our agency performance measures are included on page 7, as well as the pathways to licensure. And then on page 8, you'll notice our focus on educational outreach, not just to design professionals, but also to students, building officials, allied professionals. We also publish a newsletter to educate those individuals. We do regularly attend meetings of the Building Officials Association of Mississippi, and we frequently present at those meetings. And our goal is to strive to prevent violations through education. We also have regular communication with the Board of Licensure for professional engineers and surveyors. And we're actively involved in the national credentialing and exam organizations for architecture, landscape architecture, and interior design. Those organizations develop the uniform national exams for those professions, as well as model laws and regulations that help ensure uniformity among the states. And they provide education opportunities for us. They maintain records for professionals. So they provide a lot of services, and due largely to the efforts of these organizations, reciprocity works extremely well for the design professions because the requirements are largely uniform from state to state. Over 90% of our new licenses are issued by reciprocity to individuals who hold licenses in other states. As I mentioned before, we are actively involved in these organizations, as you'll note on page 9. That assures that Mississippi has a voice in decisions that impact applicants, interns, and registrants in the state, like exam policies, the development of programs that facilitate licensure, et cetera. And we do have a long history of service in these organizations, which accounts for a portion of our travel funding. But it's important to note that funding associated with serving in elected offices or on committees is actually funded by the organizations, not by the board or dues paid by the board. So in conclusion, we respectfully request an appropriation of $362,783 for fiscal year 26, which, as I mentioned, was increased to $363,967 by the Joint Legislative Budget Committee. And this is not part of our budget presentation, but we wanted to bring to your attention some legislation that the board is seeking. That's included in a handout in your packets. We don't have a bill number for it yet, but we understand it is going to be filed very soon. This is to amend the architectural practice requirements for business entities. And I will allow our legal counsel to provide a little explanation of that legislation just for your information.
The legislation is something we've been working on for 5 or 6 years. Initially, it started out to allow landscape architects to have an ownership interest in an architectural firm, which as of right now, and since 1977, they could not have. This legislation provides for that with certain restrictions on the percentages of ownership so that architects retain responsible control over the final drawings, preparation of drawings, plans, specifications. The other part of it is architects can only practice as a sole proprietor, a partnership, a professional corporation, or a PLLC. This is a severe impediment to architectural firms coming into the state from surrounding states and other states. And I say surrounding states because none of the surrounding states have that restriction on the practice of architecture. However, that allowing that, we also maintain that the architect and those within that firm remain individually liable for any negligence, acts, omissions, or errors in the preparations of plan specifications and drawings. We think that will relieve that impediment that we face with individuals coming into the state, having to form an entirely new company just to provide services in the state. And there are consultants and other individuals with expertise in fields that are needed, and it will certainly accelerate our ability to do that. Finally, it's only applicable to multidisciplinary firms offering architectural, engineering, landscape architectural services or architectural engineering services. So it would not be changing really anything in the way the practice of architecture is handled today. And we really would appreciate y'all's support on that. We think it's a very good bill. It's been worked on with the PE board to make sure that they're on board with it also.
Be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions? All right, well, thanks for coming. If there's anything else, let us know if we need you. Give you a call.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Right.
Thank you, Chairman. My name is Jeff Jernigan. I'm the Executive Director of the Mississippi Motor Vehicle Commission, the agency that licenses new car dealerships, manufacturers, and those warranters and those associated. Yeah. Sorry, that one was on. I just thank y'all for letting me come here today. I initially requested this. I didn't realize that LBR actually recommended us a slight increase of about $1,800 over our request, which was just generally a level funding. Just kind of recap over the past year. In the last fiscal year, we did return about 18,000 in unspent funds. We also had a civil penalty of about 11,000 that we contributed to the general fund. We are a special fund agency, but any civil penalties or any fines that we issue does go to the general fund in that. So we've had disciplinary matters that resulted into a financial penalty there. Generally, our agency, we do try to watch our spending, keep things under check. I know we are not on a state property, so we look for places that we have a building that we work with our landlord to reduce our space to keep our rent at the same rate it's been for the past 20 years instead of facing an increase where commercial properties have gone up in the past couple of years. So that's, one way is we do look to try to save and not spend things. In general, we have this extra money that we try not to spend, or we try to reserve it for things such as a hearing. We'll have to have a court reporter, or maybe have to, have other funds or expenses coming with that. We do currently have a pending dispute between a manufacturer and a dealer. It's about a $2 million dispute. It may take a week-long type of hearing. We don't know. It's in discovery phase at this point. It's supposed to be sometime this spring. It was supposed to be in the fall. They pushed it back just because of the ongoing discovery issues. And they're trying to narrow everything down before we get to a hearing. So that's why we like to have a little flexibility in our budget. And that's why we have not always spent our funds. So that's kind of what, in general, we're requesting LBR's recommendation. If there's any extra fees or any such be passed on through the budget process or through the legislative session, we'd ask those also be included. So that's it, Your Honor, or Sir Chairman.
Okay.
All right. Thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
No, man, you're good. Good afternoon, everybody. We're gonna go get started. We got a 3:15 meeting for Miss Wynn. If, whoever's representing wants to come up, the floor is yours. Now, you have to keep this to within 45 minutes. We go in session at 4, just so you know. Yeah, you can sit at the table. This is, yeah. You want the microphone? It's over there, but I don't think we've got anybody online. Do we? Okay, good. Karan, we'll just let you go ahead and go through the budget and tell us what you want to tell us. Would you mind speaking into the mic? We are recording this. Yeah, I'm sorry.
There we go.
Yeah, I
Thank
forget.
you. All right. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank y'all so much for allowing me the opportunity to present the Wireless Communication Commission's FY 26 budget with y'all this afternoon. And on behalf of our 16 commissioners and our 8 legislative liaisons, we thank y'all for allowing this. And I have today with me Mandy Davis, who's our chairman, and then Michelle Denham, who's our deputy director, and then Dent Gwines, who is the Miss Wynn System director or administrator. So they're here. But anyways, turning to the handout that you have, the first handout, you will have, it provides a breakdown. So you can see what we requested. You can see what Elbow recommended, and then what the difference is, and then what our final request is for 26. So I will just go down through the details with y'all. So in salaries, Elbow recommended the reduction of 1 position, moving WCC from 10 to 9 positions with a dollar reduction of $47,428. We're asking for the full funding, the full 10 positions, and the full $942,275. I'm not asking for increases, not asking just for the full funding of last year. And I will make a commitment that if I cannot fill that position this year, I will recommend the reduction next year. So, if you'll just allow me one more year. In travel, we're requesting Elbow's recommendation of $10,000. So thank y'all for that. In contractual services, this is our largest category, and Elbow recommended a reduction of $134,026. I'm requesting the full funding in that area, which is $10,852,786. And y'all know that more than 90% of that category goes for support of our infrastructure. And so I would ask that y'all would consider that again. We have 159 communication sites that we oversee. 2 of those will be completed this spring. As y'all know, y'all gave us $3.9 million 2 years ago. We started using that 1 year ago. The Independent site in Tate is complete, and we are working on the Ripley site in Tiffah County and the Greenfield site in Pearl River County, known as Poplarville South. So those will be completed this spring. Yay. But anyways, that's part of the infrastructure that we have. We have tower leases with 3 different companies. That's $5.75 million annually. And we own 87 towers, and it's mainly in the northern part of the state, which includes land leases. And those land leases, we have 67 land leases, and that's $470,000 annually. Again, I'm going through all the contractual services. System and environmental maintenance is $3.2 million annually. That's the contract we pay Motorola. And that is what, as we are keeping our hardened sites, and the preventive maintenance and the maintenance that goes on, that's $3.2 million. That has been that number for about 14 years at least. So we have been able to hold that number where it is. But I will tell you that the contract will end in June of 2027. And when that happens, the price will go up. We already know that. And I will tell you that that Motorola is changing their actual platform that they use. And so they've been using the current platform. When we talk about GTRs, as you've heard us talk about the GTRs, that platform is changing, but it will change for the entire US. So Motorola is changing that. The price tag right now is really high. I'm hoping that price tag will come down. And so I'm not asking for that today. I'm just kind of telling you that that's out there. We are operating a $500 million system. And so the infrastructure to keep that updated is The increase will be coming. But again, that's in the future. And so I'm not asking for that today. In utilities, electricity at all the sites, 860,000 is what we're asking for. Repairs, 100,000 is what we're asking for to purchase repair equipment, lights, generators. IT contractors, we have specialized contractors that provide QA/QC and a technology consultant that we rely heavily on. Administrative costs is 134,000. That's our cell phones, our copier, our FedEx, legal fees, ITS fees. And so that's all in contractual services. So in commodities, we're asking for Elbow's recommendation, 121,600. In that, I just want to explain that the majority of that is for propane. And as you know, at all of our sites, we have 1,000-gallon propane tanks. And those, so we do fill up fuel from time to time. And I don't know where y'all might have been on December 28th when the tornadoes came through Mississippi, but we had 43 sites on generators. And so that is what the system is designed to do. So in the southwest portion of Mississippi, and you could see Wilkinson County got the worst. And so you can see, if you look at a map, the outages. And so all those propane, at 43 of those sites, the generator came on. That's how it's designed to work. And because of that, all your public safety people could still communicate during that 3 days. Those outages, we had 2 sites that were on generator power for almost 4 days. We got another 5 sites that were on generator power for about 3 days. So again, that's why we need the propane. That's what we use the majority of commodity money for. In capital equipment, we're asking for Elbow's recommendation of 176,350. Our equipment, as it ages, we need equipment from time to time. We haven't had to buy much in the past, but our generators are getting old. We've had to replace 1 or 2 generators, and the UPSs, we've had a couple of those go out. And so a generator is about 35,000. And if the UPS, these are big UPSs, and they're about 24,000. The bigger issue is how long it takes to order those and get them in. It can be almost a year now. So anyway, that would be in capital equipment. So we're not asking for vehicles or subsidies, loans, or grants. We have some older vehicles, but they still work. So we're not asking for anything there. And so our total ask for FY26 request is $12,103,011. And again, that's $181,454 over Elbow's recommendation. And before I finish, I just wanted to emphasize the importance. I know that y'all sitting in here know the importance of Miss Wynn, but let me just say, a year ago, I talked about the Rolling Fork, what happened when those tornadoes came through Rolling Fork. And for 24 hours, Miss Wynn was the only communication system that was operational. The cellulars went down. And so we were the communication. The 1,000 electric poles were down. And so that's what Miss Wynn is designed for. And so it worked. I don't have another statewide story for you today, but that just gives you one that everybody should be familiar with. I also want to thank y'all for the refresh, the 22 million that y'all gave us 3 years ago for the refresh. We will conclude that refresh. That was for microwave and for RF portions of the system, and that will be completed this June. So that 22 million, we greatly appreciate that. Thank y'all for the money. And then in addition to that, y'all gave us 3.9 million for coverage expansion. And so I mentioned that earlier when we talk about Tate and the Independence site, we were able to spread that out for 3 sites. And so we're excited about those 3 sites. And so I just want to thank y'all. There are a couple more counties that could use your assistance. That's not a part of my request here, but I will tell you in Simpson County, McGee is in a bowl. And I've said this, I know I said it last year, but I'll say it again this year. Is that Simpson County does need some sort of assistance in that county to help in McGee because it's straight down 49. And so if I'm asking on their behalf, then we have a couple other counties, Clay County and Chickasaw County and Lawrence County. So those are on the hot list of who could use some additional assistance. Now, I think y'all all know this, but we were built out for mobile coverage and we cover 97% of Mississippi. So we're really good, but the hills and hollers of Mississippi create issues from time to time. So anyway, I'm just pointing out those few that we have. The goal is not to build towers. I don't want to build towers. The goal is to find existing sites that we can put our equipment on. And if we can do that, that saves money. We don't want a rickety tower. We want something though that will support Miss Win. And so anyways, again, back to our request, requesting the 12,103,011. And again, thank y'all for your support of Miss Win. Thank you for support of public safety. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Thank you. I want to appreciate your presentation today, and we want to thank you and your staff. Most of us here sit on your board, so you see us from time to time. So appreciate what you guys do. It's one of those things, you don't need it till you need it, but when you need it, you got to have it.
This is true.
And I believe Miss Wynn leads the nation in uptime and things, as I've
We
had
do.
opportunity to interact with you guys over the last few years. And that's, that you deserve a shout out for that for sure. And I think as you continue to expand it, we see this go beyond emergency communications. We have a lot of school districts now that are on it. So this is becoming mainstream throughout our state. Just to kind of affirm a couple questions before I open it up. The 22 million will be done in June, July. That'll be completely implemented and deployed. Okay. Some of your increases in contractual is for leases, correct?
Yes, yes.
Do we see that being a fairly, we don't see an exponential jump in leases in the near term, do we?
No, they're set.
Okay.
Actually, when we finish these that I think finalized this spring, we should go for a couple years without any increases.
Okay.
Because they increase every 5 years, 10%. So it is what it is.
No, I completely understand. That's one of the things that we do. And we do have a little bit of an income coming off of where we actually have people popping off our towers and
We do. AT&T, and C Spire, we have some leases.
good. Let's see, I think I had something else. Yeah, that upgrade that's coming at some point in the future, as I understand it, we have some equipment's really end of life equipment that's been on since we did this thing almost 20 years ago now. So it's just going to be generational change, and hopefully we can have influence and push it out a few more years, but it's coming, which will allow more technology enhancements that can be used on the system than the legacy system. Am I,
Exactly. Yes.
okay, remember that correct? Again, I want to thank y'all, and I don't have any other questions. I'll open it for the floor. Everybody good? Well, that's going to conclude it.
So in the contemplated transition from ITS over to MEMA, are you accounting or anticipating any expenses that you may incur within MEMA or by the transition?
Should be no increase in expenses.
And then, so when you talk about Simpson County, if Simpson County were to come on, or were to come to you and say, hey, well, you need to get I'm assuming that would be a GTR that they would need to have to augment the system. And they had a suitable site, whether it be a water tower or a fire outlook. You need also a power source, a secondary power source, and is it 2 data connections? Or can you get away with 1?
Well, I'm not sure how many data connections we would need, but if we're going to go fiber, it's the fiber connection. If you're not doing microwave, microwave will cost you about another $250 if you want to put that on there. So,
To
but it's
co-locate on an existing site,
It's-
what's the rough number on it?
800,000 to $1 million.
For the GTR and all the
For
support
the RF
infrastructure?
Yes.
All right.
And again, you can save money if you don't do RF. If you don't, if you don't do microwave. So you can do fiber. It's not optimal, but you can do it.
But it would be 800 without microwave and $1 million with microwave.
No, it's actually 800 with the microwave.
Okay, all right. All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, with that.
Thank you. That reminds me of another question I had. These sites that you're talking about, we may want to put at, do you have like a listing in order priority and what it would cost to do those? And coupled with that, do you have an ask coming in another way for any of those funds?
No, I've not.
Okay.
These are ones that have been on the list that
Yes.
they have said to us. And the idea would be to try to find the existing site. And if we can find an existing site to put it on, whether it's a water tank or a building or something we can put it on, each site would be around, we would look at 800 500,000 to $1 million.
If
And
it's
so-
not a big deal to ask, it'd be nice to have a list of them ranked in priority. I mean, I'm sure you're
Yeah.
gonna look at it in dollars because,
Yes.
you know, who knows? You might find something, you might not.
Right, okay,
Great.
I can put a list together.
Yeah,
So-
that'd be great. I appreciate you. Anybody else have any questions? Good. We appreciate you.
Last year we reappropriated $8.6 million for the
Yes.
refresh. You said it was going to be done in June.
Yes.
So are you not asking for any reappropriation this year?
Not this, no. That Motorola says they will be done, and we are in the last, and if you're looking at how the money has gone, Motorola originally said, we just want to invoice y'all at the end, and I said, that's not, no, you need to give us some invoices, so, but if you're seeing money still sitting in the fund, it's because they obviously are not asking for the payments as soon as they complete stuff, so, but, they're almost through with all the equipment, and it's now the software upgrade, the SUA. And so they expect to be through with that in March and then test from March to June. Does that help?
Yes,
So-
I just, if you have I guess an invoice or need a payment after July and the reappropriation isn't included, the
Oh, I
funds are
see.
gone.
Well, do we have the lapse period?
Yeah, you have,
Oh,
you have the
and then
you have
there's
the
no
lapse.
problem.
Yeah, you have the lapse period, but
Okay.
I just didn't know if there was some
No
delay.
carryover, no. They are still saying that it will be done, and so lapse period should be plenty of time.
So if I'm hearing this right, you tell the vendors, we're not writing checks past June 30th for this.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
and they,
We'll just say thank you for the contribution, right?
yes. Yes, that works.
Well, good, good. Well, if we don't have anything else, that concludes our hearing.
Thank y'all.
I need a motion. Rise and report.